Wednesday night workshop for April. The topic today is the maintenance of the work. And what does that actually mean? Well, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about maintenance. I came across a quote a few years ago where, paraphrasing it, said, everyone's looking for the miracle cream, but what really is required is maintenance. And anyone who's ever had a physical routine, you know, at the end of the day, we wash our face, take off our makeup, brush our teeth, apply night cream before we go to sleep. Some of us put this stuff in our hair so it's not so haywire in the middle of the night, etc., etc. So that's the idea of maintenance. You know, when I think about the word the work, we always introduce Omega and the Ageless Wisdom teachings as the work. And that's not intended to be funny or to scare people away. It really is work, as anyone who's ever had a maintenance routine. As a matter of fact, the first time that I can remember an actual routine that I had to develop was when I bought my very first car back in 1980, I think it was 84, 85. I bought my very first car. It was a little two-door sports car. And when I got home, the first thing that my fiance, then fiance at the time, did was pop the hood. And he started going through all of the different parts and things that I would have to do to maintain the vehicle, which I'm certain I had a deer in the headlight, like the deer in the headlight look like, what? But he did. He put himself through school as a mechanic. He has a civil engineer degree, but he put himself to school as a mechanic. So he showed me where the dipstick oil for the oil was, and where the spark plugs and the windshield wiper fluid and the radiator fluid, etc., etc. And then he proceeded to tell me about the idea of maintaining my vehicle. For example, I think it was every 2,000 miles, you had to change out the oil. Every other oil change, you changed out the oil filter. And back then in the 80s, young college students, we didn't really have the money, so we did it ourselves. So I climbed underneath the car, removed the bolt, took the oil pan down, changed out the oil, whatnot. I did everything. That was one thing he was insistent on. It's my car, I should maintain my vehicle. So the oil was changed every 2,000 miles. The tires were rotated every 3,000 miles. As a matter of fact, I learned the pattern. It was like a Z pattern. So the front driver's side went to the front passenger side, and the front passenger side went to the driver's rear side, and the driver's rear side went to the passenger side, so on and so forth. That's how we did it. Every 3,000 miles, tires were rotated. We always checked the air on the tires anytime we were going to go for a long drive, naturally. Then the spark plugs, every 3 months, we had to check the spark plugs. Back then, you had spark plugs on the car. Of the spark plugs. Once a month, I had to put a non-clogging agent in the gas tank to make sure that the engine was running smoothly. Never let your gas go below 1/4 of a tank so that the stuff that's in the bottom of the tank doesn't go through the system. You know, the windshield wiper fluid and the radiator fluid. Radiator had to be flushed every season. So there was a lot that went on into owning a car. I was really overwhelmed at first. But then when I got into the routine of it, it really wasn't that bad. And I actually took pride in my vehicle and that I knew about the car, and naturally ran well. I didn't really have too much problems with that. Then I remember the first time I bought a house. Same thing, you have to have maintenance. So the first time I bought a house, I remember when you get and the house is yours. You could do whatever you want, paint the walls, knock a wall down, change out the carpets, whatever, it's yours. So that excitement, that energy goes in, and when you move in, you move the furniture in, you hang all the pictures, you get everything put away, organized. It takes about a week, find where all the boxes, and when the final box is unboxed and you throw it in the recycling bin, you sit down and you go, it's perfect. And that lasts for maybe a week. Then there's dishes that are left in the sink, or paperwork that's sitting on the countertop in the kitchen, or somebody didn't put the remotes away. And now I had roommates, and so I remembered when I moved into the house, all of a sudden Wow, now I remember all the cleaning that we did when I was a little girl. You had your weekly cleaning. It always went dust, vacuum, and then mop. Then you had the bathrooms to clean and the kitchen to clean. That was the last thing you did. Those are 5 things you did every week. And then every spring and every fall, we did the major cleaning where the draperies would come off. We actually had summer curtains and winter curtains, so they would all come down. We'd wash the windows on the inside as well as the outside, move all the furniture, dust behind the dressers and vacuum and whatnot. It was a chore, and that usually lasted the entire weekend. And then the second weekend, we would clean out the garage, which all the bicycles would come out and all of our scooters and pogo sticks and everything that we would play on all be washed down. All of the gardening tools would be washed down and put away in their proper places. Any tools that had been left out from my dad working on the cars and stuff, they would all be put back in the tool chest, and everything was nice and clean, and it would last about, well, I'd say 6 months, but that's not true. It usually lasted about a month before it started gathering things. So back to my house, when I first moved in, I was like, oh, I'm just going to clean every week, and then I don't have to worry about the spring cleaning. Then I got roommates, and I had 2 dogs. Both of them had a dog apiece, so there were 4 dogs in the backyard, and then there was also 2 cats in the house. It was more than enough just to keep it going for the week. I remember a particular conversation we had was one weekend, the dog poop. Whose dog was pooping the most? Like, they're all the same size dogs, and we had the discussion of, well, my dog doesn't poop that big, and my dog doesn't poop in the corner. My one roommate said, oh, well, I take my dog to the park, and my dog poops in the park. When I know I've seen her out there pooping. So we had this big debate, and then we finally came to a consensus where, since it was my house, I cleaned my bedroom and my bathroom. They were responsible for, they had a shared bathroom. They were responsible for that one. And then the living room and the dining room and the kitchen kind of was my responsibility too. One of the roommates made sure he cleaned the, all he had to do was clean the poop in the backyard and then keep the front yard clean. And that worked out for a while, except for the kitchen. That was a bit of a contentious point for me, because sometimes people would cook and not clean on a Friday night because they knew Saturday I was going to come in and clean. So we sort of had to make the agreement, if I was cooking, you cleaned. If you cooked, we would clean. Like, we had to rotate that. But anyway, you understand what I'm talking about, how the maintenance, if you don't maintain it, the house is going to start to fall apart. So there's regular maintenance that needs to be tended to when you're dealing with the house. The same thing is true when it comes to physical fitness. If you are somebody who wants to lose weight, naturally, you've got to have a routine of going to the gym or exercising and eating healthy, drinking plenty of water, taking your supplements, whatnot. So there's a routine that has to be followed. There's people who don't follow routines. We let it slide, and then before you know it, we're overweight and eating junk food and not feeling healthy and whatnot. Even going to school requires a routine. This is something often difficult with kids. Those of you who have children, you understand this. Trying to get your kids to study every night, impossible. The trick would be, though, if you did study every night, when it came to a test, you would just have to review, instead of what almost every single person does, is cram the night before. We're up until 2, 3, 4 in the morning studying as much as we can to prepare us for the test. So the concept would be study every night so that you wouldn't have to worry about that. But even aside from taking tests, you know, if you're a student, if you skip a day or you miss an assignment, or then 2, or then 3, and then it starts to snowball because you've missed too much work, and then you have to play catch up, and then you're falling behind because you're not catching up or staying in touch with what's being present, so on and so forth. So the maintenance of our academic career is absolutely important if we desire to graduate on time. That's absolutely important. So naturally, all of these have to deal with a goal. Keeping a house, upkeep of a house, the car, the maintenance of a vehicle. We have obviously health benefits for our diet and whatnot. Think about this, if you've ever seen a house that wasn't maintained. That's sad, actually. It looks very dilapidated, the roof might be falling in, and sometimes I drive across New Mexico desert, and we cut across the reservation. And sometimes it's really sad to see some of the houses that are on the reservation that haven't been kept up well. The roof is falling in, and I'm not just talking about reservation, but that's like the first thing that came to my mind, is where places aren't maintained well. You know, you can go to Beverly Hills, and everyone's got their own little manicurist, and the gardeners come and take care of the yard and whatnot, and it gives you a good, healthy feeling, a nice, clean feeling, especially when you succeed. So you maintain your car, you feel good about it because the car is running well. Maintain your house. Almost everybody has this experience. When you're done cleaning, you really feel not only a feeling of self-satisfaction, but there's pride that comes into it. Like the house feels clean, it looks clean, it feels nice to be inside. The houses that are not well maintained, people who have a lot of clutter about, it's a little claustrophobic, could be depressing, disorganized perhaps, maybe. We have to be cautious about this, because sometimes if you're living with another person, their organization may be quite different than yours, and so that's sometimes where the clutter comes from. But I was thinking about, if you've ever seen water, especially here in Phoenix, if you see water that's sitting around in the summertime, and there's no drainage and there's no pool pump going on, it's just water, especially somebody whose pool isn't working anymore and the water's just sitting there. There's no irrigation, there's no turning of the water. Eventually, within a matter of days, you'll start to get algae. And then you'll attract mosquitoes, and the water will turn green and stuff will start to grow on it. That's because stagnation has set in. So stagnation, for me, I believe that stagnation is the first step of decay. On the physical world, it's the first step of decay. But it's actually the first step of decay on all the different levels. For example, we have emotional decay or stagnation. We might be emotionally shut off or too emotional, but I'm talking mostly about the people who are emotionally shut off. There's that stagnation that sets in, and then there's no more connection, no more desire to do anything, fulfillment is out the door, depression steps in, your desire to live might even dissipate as well. We can have stagnation of the mind, where I'm not thinking anymore. I sit mindlessly watching TV, or mindlessly playing a video game, or on my phone or on my tablet, just going through social media mindlessly. And then my mind is not stimulated anymore, so it begins to decay. So those are the things we have to be careful of, is the decay that might occur in our lives when we don't maintain ourselves. So after the idea of maintenance, we all understand this. Of course, I could even say any athlete will tell you it's about the maintenance. I saw a great story about the Boston Marathon. So the woman, it was the first time a woman has won since the 80s. She won, and then a beautiful story about the very last one who came across the finish line, had cancer 3 times. I think she battled it. Her doctors didn't want her to try the marathon, but she did it, and after about a little bit of time that was in, maybe 45 minutes I think it was, she stopped. So she went home, recuperated, and then she came back onto the track and finished. She actually finished like at 12:30 in the morning. She came back to complete her thing. I think that was beautiful. So it's all about maintenance and maintaining, and her spirit was just wonderful. So sometimes if our physical body kicks out, it's our spirit that continues on. One of my favorite lines from the poem If is, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve their turn long after they are gone, and do so, oh, I'm going to forget it, when there's nothing left within you except the will which says to them, hold on. That's willpower. And that's what's required to do the work for our inner work, whether you want to call it our soul, our spirit, our religious nature, our spiritual nature, whatever definition you want to go with, any title. So the inner work, I'm going to go with spiritual. My spiritual work requires willpower. The reason why it requires willpower, because when it comes to our physical, I could see when I clean the car, it's clean and it looks great. When I clean my house, it's clean and it looks great. I could actually see the rewards of my effort. But on the inner realm, I can't see that. I don't see the immediate satisfaction. I don't feel the immediate satisfaction because it's internal. What does the inner work mean? Well, I'm working on the development of my consciousness, perhaps my awareness. Maybe I'm looking to expand, to be more inclusive, to be less judgmental. How do we see the results on that? That's why the work can be a bit disdaining. You know that when I'm going to hike a mountain, I could see the peak, I see the trail, I see the obstacles, and I have some clarity of what to do. On the inner realm, there really isn't much clarity. There isn't a destination. I'm looking for expansion, but I don't know where that's taking me to. Buddha used to talk about compassion, the 8 steps, the noble truths for compassion. How do you know you've reached them? When do we reach or know that we've reached nirvana, according to the Buddhist? Christianity talked about love one another. Does that mean I love every single person, I never react, and if I don't, I'm never gonna, naturally we react to people, so on and so forth. I'm jumping ahead of myself. So as I said, in the physical realm, we can see definite progress, but in the spiritual realm, we can't. And this is where we don't feel like we're making progress. So think about in the physical realm. There's some times where I'm exhausted, I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed, I've got no time, so I'll actually let things slide. I'll rotate the tires maybe next month. Or, yeah, I can go for a little bit longer but without cleaning. Laundry's a little sensitive. Yeah, I know I have to do the laundry once a week. I knew somebody that didn't realize about laundry early, young kid. So she would just wear her clothes, put it back in the drawer. You have to maintain your laundry, but you can get along with it, pushing it, try to use as much garments as you have before you actually have to do the laundry, but eventually you're going to have to do your laundry. But we get a little overwhelmed, disenchanted, perhaps a little depressed, or just flat out lazy, and we let things slide. And those are the things that we see the results on. So then let's go to the spiritual work. Internally, it can be really easy to let things slide. We call it the work because the definition of the work, I should define you. It's an activity involving mental or physical effort done in order to achieve a purpose or a result. That's work. Again, an activity involving mental and physical effort in order to achieve a purpose or a result. So the inner work is so much more harder to define our achieved purpose and results. And that's why we let it often slide. So every achievement that we experience is the direct result of effort. Everything we do is the direct result of effort. That includes our spiritual work. What does that mean then? So I've already described how you maintain things in the physical realm, but how do we maintain things on the inner realm? Well, that's a great question. So just as our car, the house, our garden, all requires a routine, the same thing is with our internal. We need to have a routine. So when the tire pressure is low, we add air naturally. So when I'm starting to lose my momentum or my willpower is low, I do something to inspire myself. I attend a seminar, I read a book, I change a habit. So I do something to inspire myself. Just like we weed the garden, you pull the weeds out in a garden, the same is true for my internal. I have to weed those thoughts out, my judgmental thoughts, or my negativity, any doubt that may come in, oh, I'm not worth it, any depressing thoughts. I have to weed those out. Just like spring cleaning, every 6 months you do a spring cleaning. The same is true with me internally. I do some kind of spring cleaning where I sit back and I review. I take evaluation. How am I doing on this? Have I succeeded on my compassion? Am I still judgmental? Is my reaction time less now? Or am I not as intense when I'm reacting? Am I thinking more about compassion and harmlessness? So it's always evaluating myself. How could I have handled that situation with more compassion? Being more conscious of my actions and how I show up in a room, how I interact with my relationships. Now this requires work, effort. It requires effort. It's not just going to go boom and that's it. So when I think about people who live spiritual or peaceful lives, they do have a routine, and not necessarily minute by minute set in stone, but there's typically things they do throughout their day that maintains their peaceful posture. Ben Franklin had that quote that said, "Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise." I believe that to be true, and mostly because it's a routine. So many great teachers, they've talked about prayer and meditation. Many great teachers have talked about prayer and meditation. And I'm not just talking about spiritual teachers. Political leaders have talked about it. Teachers in the classrooms have talked about it. There's the idea of prayer and meditation, which takes us to a place where we recognize there's something greater than myself, that I am a part of something bigger. And by having that recognition, it gives me hope or faith, belief that my life has value, or that I'm making a contribution. So prayer can be, for those very religious individuals, they pray constantly. It could be something as simple as praying for our meals, prayer before you go to bed, or a prayer when you first wake up. Pray when you see an accident on the side of the road. A prayer for someone that you know who's struggling with cancer or any other illness or disease that may occur. So prayer is very helpful. Again, prayer, we never really see the results of our actions, but doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. That's something to consider. Meditation, another thing. I love meditation. Been meditating most of my life. Meditation is the idea to connect with the inner realms, to control my mind, to learn how to control my mind, implement creativity and visualization. There are also great teachers that have talked about gratitude, expressing gratitude. Dr. Wayne Dyer was very big on this, about being grateful for the things we have. There's a vibration, a certain vibration that comes about when we do express gratitude in our lives. So when it comes to the gratitude, it could be anything. Grateful for being alive. I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful for my husband, for my house, my job, my car, my children, so on and so forth. Just putting your mindset in the idea of gratitude rather than I want this, I want that, I don't have this, I don't have that. Be grateful for what we do have, and appreciation comes into play. Deepak Chopra, he meditates. Meditate first thing in the morning. That's his thing. The first thing you do, get up and meditate and set your intention for the day. Torquem Saradarium stated that anytime you're about to do a task, read something beautiful, pray or meditate. Before every task you do, read, pray, or meditate to set your intention again before you start your task. The Buddha would often suggest evaluation, contemplating on compassion. In any spare moment that you have, contemplate compassion. Are we being compassionate? Are my actions compassionate? Am I expressing harmlessness? Jesus, I've already mentioned, said love one another. So practice loving one another, coming from a place of love rather than judgment or fear. Gandhi, he taught peaceful resolution. So that's a good thing to consider. In every altercation, in any conversation, confrontation, am I taking the road of a peaceful resolution? Or do I need to be the one who wins? So that's something to consider as well. So that throughout the day, I've been taught throughout the day, stop and pause. Take a moment and pause. Just close your eyes and pause. Reconnect with yourself. Go outside and step in nature. I love this trend that's come about walking meetings. People will go outside and walk outside. Of course, in Arizona, we have great weather to do that. But I know people back east walk the hallways, go up and down the stairs, do a walking meeting to get the energy running and changing, to do something different. All of these are great contributions that we can do to maintain the work that we have. George Adair, the founder of Omega Vector, would often talk about how he'd get up at 3 o'clock in the morning every day to write. 3 o'clock in the morning every day, between 3 and 3:30, every day he'd get up and write. And sometimes he would just sit at his computer and the screen would be blank and he'd just sit there waiting for inspiration to happen. He'd make himself available for inspiration. Now, I'm not saying that if you started getting up at 3 o'clock every morning, you're going to be inspired. I think what works for one person may not work for another. So you have to go with what works for you. And the caution is, don't take everything on at once. Try one thing for a while, then add another thing. then another thing. And before you know it, you have a whole series of things that you're doing throughout the day. For example, when I first started, meditation was always important to me, so I meditated every day. I try meditating in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. I try meditating in a chair, laying down, walking. I mean, I tried all different kinds. I also tried different types of meditations until I found one that I resonated with. And after I got the routine of meditating, well, then I added the gratitude. So as a matter of fact, my first thing in the morning is I do gratitude and then go into a meditation. So I'll start out with a sense of gratitude and it takes me right into a meditation. And with that, I also set my intention for the day. And then, of course, evaluation. I've been taught by many teachers about evaluation. After a conversation, consider, how did I handle that? Was that compassionate? Was I attempting to be harmless? And reconcile. If I didn't, apologize. I'm sorry that came across the wrong way. So that's the constant thought process. My mind is thinking all the time anyway. Why not put it to use? So it's the evaluation. The pausing every day to appreciate the greatness, the joy, and the beauty. To pause and stop and listen to the birds. Oh, I can hear the birds chirping. Or to look at the beautiful sunset or sunrise. See the trees waving in the wind, go for a walk being outside in nature, or just even be the beauty that's in your house. I personally love when I pass by a park, you can always hear the children laughing. That always gets to me, just pure laughter and joy in having fun. So looking for beauty and joy every day. I was also taught an evening review, meaning that as I come to the end of the day, I sit and I think about my day. But I start from the moment that I sat down to think about it, and I work my way all the way back to the day. And the same thing. I check and see, how did I do today? Was I calm? Did I present myself in the manner I wanted to? Overall, was it a good day, a bad day, so on and so forth. And then the final thing, of course, I do every night before I go to sleep is a prayer, a blessing, whatever works for you. But that always sets my intention to be grateful for the day that I had and to set my mind for the next day, or stepping into the world of sleep. A lot of teachers express the idea that before you go to sleep, you should set your mind in a place so that your dreams will carry that intention forward as well. Again, I have no way to prove this, but I kind of think it makes sense. If I watch a scary movie before I go to sleep, I have scary dreams. If I watch a very pleasant movie before I go to sleep, I'll have pleasant dreams. And if I don't, and if I'm just reading, I have different types of dreams. So I'm aware that what I do before I go to sleep does impact my dreams, if you're a person who remembers your dreams. But even if you don't, what's the harm in setting the intention? So as I said before I go to sleep, there's always a blessing. And then I think about what is it that I'd like to achieve for tomorrow. I remember I read a study somewhere where they said most women are going through their minds before they go to sleep. I mean, I'm very jealous of my husband. He puts his head down, and I'm not kidding. 5 seconds, 15 seconds, he's out. We could be in the middle of a conversation and I'll hear him snoring. He's got that nice, peaceful, deep. So how do you do that? My mind is like, blah. And then I have the tendency to wake up now. The older I'm getting, I wake up in the middle of the night. Insomnia, I'll wake up and my mind will just engage. And I'll start going through the things that I want to get done or haven't done. And then I have to intentionally try to shut that down. So all of that is maintenance as well. So the concept is to embrace the idea of maintenance on the spiritual level, even though we can't see definitively, we can't see progress. But I can tell you this. When I do my evaluations, I recognize that I'm a lot more calmer than I was 20 years ago, 28 years ago, when I first started Omega. I have a lot more compassion in my thought process. I think more before I speak. I consider others first a lot more than when I first was introduced to this work. I feel a great deal of peace, and gratitude has really become a big part of my life. So it's not like I can pinpoint and say, well, in 1997, this is when I received gratitude. I think it was just a long progress. And I'm just using me. I mean, you can think about people that you might be inspired by. Oprah Winfrey does a lot of great work on the spiritual realm. It didn't just happen like that. She did a lot of work. Many teachers did a lot of work to make themselves get to a place where they were. I mean, if you read the story about Buddha, that's a beautiful story of how he came to finally reach his point under the tree, the nirvana state under the tree. Same thing with Muhammad, Jesus, of course, and Gandhi, and all the other spiritual leaders that we could look to for teachings. The last thing I'd like to say about maintenance is find a format that works for you. Perhaps maybe you like the Buddhist more than the Hindu religion or the Muslim, or don't even stick with a religion. Just find something that works for you. And as I stated before, try one thing at a time. Don't take it all at once, because you're going to feel like, oh, I missed this, I missed that. Start with one simple thing, gratitude. Then move on to meditation. Then move on to paying attention to your thinking. I mean, just add it slowly until you finally get a routine that feels comfortable enough for you that it becomes an actual part of what you do in your living. So thank you all for joining me this evening. I truly appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you next time for our Monday night workshop in May. Have a good evening. Good night.